Imagine a thief, but not the kind who lurks in dark alleys, picking pockets and creeping through shadows. This one moves like a performer, scaling walls, flipping over guards, tumbling past deadly traps with the grace of a cat. He is more than just a rogue, he is an artist of movement, a master of agility, a daredevil adventurer who can escape almost any danger. This is the Thief-Acrobat, a non-player character class introduced in Dragon magazine back in the early 80s. Unlike the traditional thief, this was not a class of deception and backstabbing, but one of physical mastery, the ultimate fantasy parkour expert, running across rooftops long before the term even existed. So, what made this Thief-Acrobat stand out? How did it fit into the world of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons? And why was it so unique compared to other character classes? Let's find out. The year was 1983. Return of the Jedi would dominate the box office, and Advanced Dungeons and Dragons was in full swing. At this time, the thief was already an established class, sneaky, skilled in trap and lockpicking, and specializing in backstabbing. But what about the adventurers who did not just rely on stealth but on sheer agility and acrobatics to survive? Enter the Thief-Acrobat, a class first introduced by Gary Gygax himself and is from the Sorcerer's Scroll column in Dragon magazine issue 69. This was a split class, meaning it was not something you could start the game with. Instead, a character had to begin as a thief and could only transition to Thief-Acrobat upon reaching level 6. To qualify, you needed a dexterity of at least 16 and a strength of 15, because climbing and flipping around while wearing a backpack full of stolen gold was not easy work. Once you met these requirements, you left behind some of your traditional thief abilities, but gained new acrobatic powers that made you an escape artist and movement specialist like no other. The Thief-Acrobat was designed to be a specialist in athleticism and agility, turning their body into a weapon just as effective as any sword or dagger. Where other thieves relied on deception and stealth, the Thief-Acrobat used speed, precision, and sheer physical prowess to overcome obstacles and evade enemies. Their mastery of movement was their greatest advantage, allowing them to navigate terrain and situations that would leave other adventurers trapped or exposed. One of the most defining abilities of the Thief-Acrobat was tightrope walking, a skill that allowed them to cross even the most precarious ledges, ropes, or beams with ease. Whether sneaking across a guard's watchtower or escaping a collapsing bridge, a Thief-Acrobat could move as effortlessly over a thin rope as a trained swordsman did on solid ground. This skill allowed them to bypass entire sections of dungeons, cross dangerous gaps, and reach places no one else could. Unlike standard thieves who relied on climbing and grappling hooks, the Thief-Acrobat could use pole vaulting to quickly clear obstacles. This skill gave them the ability to leap over castle walls, scale battlements, and escape pits or rivers with ease. While most adventurers had to find doors or climb ladders, a Thief-Acrobat could use a sturdy pole to launch themselves over barriers in the blink of an eye. In combat, this ability allowed them to reposition rapidly, keeping them out of reach of heavily armored foes. In addition to their pole vaulting abilities, Thief-Acrobats were incredible jumpers. Where most characters had to carefully navigate gaps or use elaborate setups to get across obstacles, the Thief-Acrobat could simply leap great distances, making them nearly impossible to corner. Need to escape across a rooftop? No problem. Facing an enemy with a deadly reach? Just jump away from them. Whether clearing chasms, avoiding spike traps, or bounding from one balcony to another, the Thief-Acrobat's superior jumping ability made them one of the most mobile classes in the game. The true hallmark of the Thief-Acrobat was their tumbling evasion, a skill that allowed them to avoid attacks without needing armor. Instead of blocking or parrying, they rolled, flipped, and twisted to dodge blows entirely. This meant they could move through combat like a whirlwind, slipping past enemies, evading strikes, and even escaping grapples with ease. Against slow or heavily armored opponents, a Thief-Acrobat was a nightmare, able to weave between attacks and reposition before their enemies could react. Together, these abilities made the Thief-Acrobat one of the most dynamic and mobile character classes ever introduced in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. They weren't just good at getting into places others couldn't, they were also masters of escape, combat positioning, and battlefield control. Whether balancing on a wire above a dragon's lair, vaulting over castle walls, or flipping through a rain of arrows unscathed, the Thief-Acrobat was the ultimate example of agility, skill, and daring. If the Thief-Acrobat sounds familiar, it is because this type of character existed long before Dungeons & Dragons and has been a staple in fantasy and adventure storytelling for decades. Think of Robin Hood, swinging from castle rafters and climbing ivy-covered towers to escape the sheriff's men. Ever read Pawn of Prophecy? Think of Silk, also known as Prince Kelder of Drasnia. A master of espionage, deception, and acrobatics, Silk embodies many of the qualities of a thief-acrobat. He moves with cat-like agility, scales walls effortlessly, and uses his quick reflexes to escape danger. His wit is just as sharp as his skills, making him a character who thrives not just through stealth, but through sheer agility and cleverness. Whether he is leaping from rooftops or talking his way out of trouble, Silk is the perfect example of how the thief-acrobat archetype has been embraced in fantasy literature. And for fans of the Dungeons & Dragons animated series, you might recognize Diana, the acrobat, one of the main characters, whose fighting style and movement perfectly embodied the thief-acrobat class. So, what happened to this amazing lost character class? Well, it never really got an official second edition release, but elements of it were incorporated into later versions of Dungeons & Dragons. In D&D 3rd edition, the rogue class gained a lot of the agility-based movement skills that originally made the thief-acrobat unique. In 4th edition, the acrobat concept was absorbed into certain rogue builds, focusing on agility and movement rather than stealth. And in 5th edition, we have subclasses like the Swashbuckler Rogue and the Way of the Cobalt Soul Monk, which emphasize high agility, acrobatic movement, and combat mobility, echoing the original idea of the thief-acrobat. Well, what do you think? Would you play this OG class in your campaign? Or better yet, have you ever homebrewed a modern version for your player character? Drop your best thief-acrobat stories in the comments below. Tell us about the time your acrobatic rogue flipped past a dragon's claws, dodged a death trap, or escaped a castle by leaping from a chandelier. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into classic Dragon Magazine classes, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon, because next time, we are covering another lost relic of Dungeons & Dragons history. Until then, keep your dice rolling and your feet light as a feather.